we have one last thing, very briefly, I hope, before we get to Sean, which is a follow-up on a different part of the debate. So I don't want to play a whole thing from it, but I think we have just the little 60-second montage for this that we put out on the TikTok and as a YouTube short. So just to refresh people's memory about this part of the debate.
If part of your concern is about social media manipulation, is about censorship, if you actually care about understanding the source of the problem, you should think about what are people really worried about. We live in enough of a democracy that by and large people aren't worried about getting arrested. What are they worried about? They're worried about getting fired. Because the majority of Americans work in non-unionized workplaces where the boss can fire them at any time with no recourse and no due process. When you're a member of a union, you actually have an organization that will represent you when you're accused of wrongdoing.
No, I couldn't imagine, based on what you'd said, that'd been true, because I've been in 2 unions, and they were so corrupt.
However corrupt that union might have been that you were part of, if you had been accused of an infraction subject to disciplinary process, then you would have had the option of having them represent you in that process. That
Wrong. Your subjective perspective.
It's not subjective. It's a fact that the effect of unions is to give you due process.
And sometimes they don't, because humans are fallible.
Okay, but you can say the same thing about having trial by jury. It's still a due process.
All right, so the last episode of a podcast that we like around here, Valley Labor Report, or I don't know if it was an episode or a stream or what it was officially, but anyway, in any case, something Valley Labor Report put out. They went through some of that debate. They took issue with part of it. They didn't like the sort of level at which I'd emphasize the sort of lawyer analogy, because they were worried that might suggest a sort of third-partyized kind of service unionism model, although we kind of hashed it out on Twitter, and they ultimately agreed that that's more of a matter of emphasis, than a substantive disagreement. But the part I want to highlight here, just to put a last little bow on this, is something that the other union, Jake, from Valley Labor Report, said, that about that last exchange with Tim Pool, right, where Tim is saying, "Oh, that's subjective," right? That I think that unionization gives you due process when you're about to be fired, and I just want to play just a minute of the Valley Labor Report response to this.
What Ben was saying is so important that it has actually been enshrined into law that unions have a duty to represent you fairly. And if unions do not represent you fairly, if you are disciplined on the job, and this is an individual response, and but it's more than people in non-union workplaces have. If you are disciplined on the job, and your union legitimately does not represent you fairly or at all, and you deserved representation, you can file a failure to represent against them, an unfair labor practice with the NLRB, and make them represent you. Like, it's illegal for them not to represent you.
So we could just maybe add this to the list. We've done a few segments of the format. Tim Pool doesn't understand, fill in the blank. And I think that labor law perhaps belongs on that list.
You have been watching free public content from Give Them an Argument. To access every single episode of the show, the main show on Monday nights, all of the streams, all of the debate breakdowns, all of the patron-exclusive postgames on Monday nights, all of the patron-exclusive bonus episodes every week, and much, much more, go to patreon.com/Ben Burgis. I cannot resist ending this with, don't be foolish.